reduce government funding, of state government funding, for 300,000. In their plan, which I refer to as the best case scenario, and they identified that, and we to date have no reason to specifically question it, that in the aged care aspect, which is, as we've alluded to, each resident gets assessed and the Commonwealth Government pays accordingly to that resident's needs in what's called the ACFI assessment. Now, it's not uncommon for providers, particularly in rural hospitals and small providers such as us, where we have 18 residents and some people have 200 residents. But the process is complex, and they believe that we could, on the current 14 residents, gain an extra $200,000 per resident. Per resident, for 14, beg your pardon. Wish it was for every resident. Now, if that is true, and to date we've got no reason to disbelieve that, what we don't know, and time is of the essence really, but what we don't know is at what cost is it for us to get that 200,000? Is that net? It's not. Is it really 200,000? Could be 150, could be 110, could be 99. We don't know. They're asking us to put our faith in them that they're right. And to do that, they've said, well, use your bonds, use your entitlements, use whatever you can to encourage all of you to use the hospital. You get sick and use it. And that's the reality. Encourage people to, and maybe some people go for whatever reasons to other hospitals and other health services. It's your choice. Freedom of choice. And so that's an aspect of their plan, and we are doing the appropriate due diligence at the speed at which we can facilitate to be able to ascertain if that is reality. And if it is, it's $200,000 across 12 months. It's not $200,000 at the end of June or next week. And so we need to be able to survive to be able to achieve that. Other parts of their plan would say, okay, here's your accident emergency. Their suggestion is that we have one nurse, I forget if it's an enrolled or a registered, maybe a registered nurse, and then the other person would be a personal care attendant, which not a nurse. And I'm not slighting rather personal care attendants. They're extraordinarily important to our hospital as they are elsewhere in the attention they give to residents, but they're not a nurse. And they're, under our enterprise bargaining agreement with our nurses, is we have to have 2 nurses enrolled and or registered. Under the nurses, would it be the nurses? Okay. So, under the Nurses Federation and Emergency Care Services, is it an act or a best practice, best standard? So it's not. Is to have 2 nurses. Now, I'm pretty sure that the people in the bureaucracy of Country Health SA and possibly the government have never actually worked front line in an accident and emergency. I have. And I'm pretty sure that you'd want a nurse and 2 nurses. Not because personal care attendants wouldn't do what they can, but as it is an extraordinarily intense place to be. It's not one that you would choose as a high priority in your life to go to, because typically it's not pleasant. And so you need skills, you need someone to be able to cross-check your drugs, and there are certain levels of care. And I and the board feels that right at this point in time, apart from having to rebroker an enterprise bargaining agreement and going against the trend that even government hospitals don't have personal care attendants. And we sometimes struggle with, well, if it's good for us, why don't you do it if it's that effective? Another part was certain changes in our staffing structures, middle management. Apparently we've got a lot of middle management. It's sometimes complex when I reflect upon Country Health SA structure. But we know from, and it was before my time on the board, that what our minimalist is. And they're asking us to go below what we know as a hospital we struggle to get compliances. What I mean by that is we have accreditations, and if we drop our staffing levels towards where they're suggesting, it will put undue pressure and unrealistic expectations on the ability for the hospital to function, let alone do its paperwork. And really when Heidi came, that's where the hospital was at, and got us to the point where we have all our compliances. We're as good as any other hospital in terms of our accreditation. So we know what our minimum is, and our minimum is above what they're suggesting. So their plan is inappropriate for our hospital to work at the barest essential needs. So when we look at their plan, and it was, I remember rightly, something like $500,000 of extra income through savings and the aged care income per year. Now, there are some changes that we would look to embrace, and some we already have, and some more than likely will need to be done. But the government has this strange perception that we can institute such changes and it will be all right within weeks. They don't comprehend the discussion that says, okay, if the state government wants to take funding away, and let's not be fooled by it, I think this instance is a big domino. I think we're at the start of the dominoes. If we want to look across rural, let alone metropolitan South Australia, the attraction of services and the imposts they put on the taxpayer, the government will say, you need to be able to survive on your own, and you need to have a hospital that can break even or better. And you need to screw down your hospital to provide whatever services you can and still make a profit. And their view is, put your efforts into aged care because the Commonwealth will fund. And we do, we will. And they'll say, you need to be profitable and we'll only give you $300,000. And yet, with our hospitals, it costs us $3.4 billion because we can't make them make money. Because you can't make money out of hospitals, let alone in rural and regional areas. That's why the Commonwealth Government says, well, we believe in block funding. To give rural hospitals a big sum of money so that they can survive when they don't have high activity. Because they've still got to have the staff there for when you have the bus crash, when you have the sick person come in. You can't just shunt the people out the door at 5 o'clock at night and say, well, we'll see you back at 9, we're all clocking off. It doesn't work that way. It's unrealistic. And yet, we have to foster a way, and we have a charter now. Until some sense can be made out of the government situation, if it is all ever possible, we have a charter now to become a hospital, and one of the rarest hospitals in this nation, in rural and regional Australia, that makes a profit. Now, I don't think to my knowledge and my investigations, that isn't yet achieved. So we have to be able to find a way that sees us develop the ability to provide all the services that we see as a community right now as important to us. And maybe we'll have to change. Maybe we will have to have a 12-5 an accident emergency. Maybe we just won't be able to have acute care beds. Maybe we will have to have people come to the door and point to a public hospital. And maybe the compromises we have to make on healthcare to be able to at least keep something in the town, keep doctors, keep aged care. It's not desirable, it's not. At the end of the day, we deserve better. We deserve what much of the rest of the state, if not the nation, would like as a basic health service. Doing the best they can, given whatever circumstances they're thrown at. They have skills. I think that in that one essence of what he said today and the other part, that this is just a scare tactic by the board to raise concern in the country community. I sort of like, I live in the country community. You know, I'm not you living in the city who doesn't care. But it crystallised something for me, which I probably knew anyway, and the board did, is that extraordinarily impossible to negotiate with someone who doesn't care, who's turned their back on you, who always had their back turned 7 months ago. So we could, as a board, and we will still do so, but we could really put all our efforts as we have in the last 5 or 6 months to get that big boat to turn around, to get that government to change its mind, to save its face. Probably don't want to say this, but even the discussions I've had and Xenophon's had, and the discussions I've had off the record, people that I know, the government isn't going to change their mind as they see it. The only way they're going to change their mind is if they're forced to change their mind. But the hospital board's got to split now, not the board. It's got two things that need to be done. We've got to make a hospital be viable, and that's the hospital board's job. Can't do it at the moment on its own. It needs financial assistance, and it's going to need it from you because we can't go to the bank at this point in time. We won't be able to make our payments. So in support of the community, if it's 2 months, if it's 6 months, if it's 8 months, we need time, which the government won't give us, to embroider the change that we need to create to give us some form of health service, to give us doctors, to give us aged care, and the other services, God willing, will just fall into line. Yes, we might be lucky we'll get a philanthropist somewhere along the way. We'll probably need them. But that's what the hospital board's job is now, a viable hospital going. It's probably spent its time over the years gone by always hoping, always believing, just assuming, full-heartedly, no less, that the government would always be there. It would support us. When things got tight, the government would be there because we're important. Well, it's not the truth, because the government doesn't care. They made that abundantly clear. They knew when they took the funding away what position, but they didn't care. In fact, they never told us. We had to read it in the paper. So that's where the hospital is. It needs finance from somewhere, and it's going to be the community, until it can get steps away. Maybe it'll be 2 steps forward, 1 step back. I don't know. But I know, in my own opinion, it's worth it. Yes, we've got some money to lose, to retain and gain. And that's what the hospital board needs to do and the hospital needs to do. On the other side, the community can take it to the hill to the government. Community can do what they want to do. They can manifest whatever they want. Rural, city, anti-government, take it to the marginal seats. Nail them if they want. And they probably deserve it. But we've got to focus now as well, as much as keeping the hospital open. And I tell you that from all my understanding, it's going to come down to you and what money you can supply. And you're going to have to put trust. You're going to have to put trust in me and these people, and more particularly, those that replace them. Because we can't do it forever and won't do it forever. It's your hospital. You put it here, and you want to see it go forward. But it's up to you. I wish I could do a lot more, but right now, can't do any more. It's your turn.